going to talk about fortune telling versus divination. There are still lingering and outdated views on tarot, such as believing that it's linked with evil forces or considered taboo. The reason being is that reading tarot is still considered a form of divination by some people, which is forbidden by most of the world's major religions. Thankfully, as time has gone on, people have become more enlightened to the nature alternative spiritual systems. So, as I asked earlier, none of you have done readings for other people, correct? Okay. So a lot of things that I have run into is that personally is when I started reading for people, they were really scared about knowing what their fate was. And what I'm going to explain in the next little segment is that is about how to talk to somebody that is scared of that, like to explain them or educate them that we're not telling them their fate necessarily, we're telling them what could happen or what may be happening, and to better understand what is going on. So, as I just said, some can be nervous due to feeling as if they are relinquishing their power and future to fate, and there may be nothing they can do about it. This is where it's very important to make the distinction between fortune telling and divination. Fortune telling is being able to predict a person's future, whereas divination is assessing information, wisdom, and advice from the astral realm, ancestors, spirit guides, the divine, and who all serve our highest good. Additionally, many people may ask, well, who is the guiding intelligence behind this? This answer all depends on your own personal beliefs. The tarot is a tool of understanding the language of the realm, meditation, and reflection. Tarot can additionally be very empowering as it can bring clarity to some very confusing situations and complex situations. It allows us to listen and shape our future based on the decisions we make now. So, recently, a show came out called The Blood of Zeus. So that's on Netflix. I'm obsessed with mythology, and specifically Greek mythology. I absolutely adore it. There's a scene where Curat, which is Zeus's son, goes to meet with the Fates. And Curat is basically like, I don't believe in fate. And the Fates respond with a story, and I'm going to explain it here in a second. But I feel like the story is very important, and I think it kind of clarifies kind of what, well, specifically Curat says, I believe in free will, is what he responded with. He said, I don't believe in fate, I believe in free will. The Fates responded, and what their story was like, they said, take a table. Now imagine a baby walking across the table. We, as the Fates, know that if that baby keeps walking, it's going to fall off and get hurt. That baby doesn't know that yet. So imagine, and that baby has free will to stop at the end of the table. But if it doesn't stop, then it'll fall off. And what I try to explain when I incorporate that into like what I'm talking about now is that we are the babies, and the tarot cards are our way of talking to these higher powers and explaining what's going on, like what if or what could. So yeah, that's my story behind that. It's also important to remember that we are the interpreters and readers and are a part of this entire equation. We are tapping into our wisdom of higher self in order to interpret and translate the cards. All right, so now we're going to cover some history. This might be a little boring for some, but it does give insight as to why tarot is the way it is today. So tarot is relatively new when it comes to comparing it to other divination tools, such as watching the flight patterns of birds, scrying, and palm reading. These started way before history was even being recorded. During the 18th century, many French scholars and aristocrats became interested in the occult, meaning, with those of you that don't know what occult means magic, divination, and alchemy. The reason of this was due to the rediscovering of older philosophical and mystical traditions. Next, the first publication of the tarot is actually considered an essay. So this would be like the books that we read or like stuff that we're explaining about these divination tools. It was published by, and I'm not going to say this person because it's a French name and I cannot speak French for the life of me, so I will write it down for you guys if you guys want to record it and do some research on this person. Or if any of you know how to say this, I would be more than happy to listen to you say it so I learn it.
T's are usually silent.
Oh yeah, it is. So it might be One chords a
Gabelin.
Anyway, that was in 1781 was when the first publication of the tarot came out. This inspired many, and a few years later, I'm gonna write this. This person we'll say Allier for now. Allier published the first guide to reading tarot as a divinationary tool. And they both used a deck known as, sorry guys, if I knew how to speak French, this would be so much easier.
Jean-Baptiste Allier, I think.
So this is one of the very first tarot cards, tarot decks. So that deck, Versailles, that was produced in 1748. And as I said, the first publication actually came out in 1781. So some myths of the tarot. So we're gonna bust those right out. Myths of the tarot. It was thought that the Egyptians had began the tarot due to imagery on the cards. This is actually false. When people had made the assumption it was during that time, it was considered fashionable to link anything to ancient Egypt. Additionally, people had believed that gypsies had brought the tarot to Europe. Also false. These nomadic people who were believed to be Egyptians, which again has been proven false by scholars. These nomadic people actually originated in India and came to Europe in the Middle Ages and are correctly identified as the Romans. So obviously you can see where gypsies came from because Egypt, gypsies, that's where it came from, but it's false. It's actually, yeah, not very good to call a gypsy a gypsy. So here are some facts about the tarot. So it is true that the tarot deck, as we know it today, was modeled on playing cards by nobles in medieval society. The suits were typically known as batons, which how we associate them in the Rider-Waite deck today would be wands. Cups are also known as chalices. Swords are swords still. And coins, or as we associate it to pentacles. Each suit contains an ace, jack, and the jack in the Rider-Waite deck is actually a page, Queen, King, and are numbered from 2 to 10. These cards actually originated in Italy and was printed by okay, this is another one. I feel like I could say it if I really tried, but I feel like it's better if I just write it down. Bonifacio Bembo. So that's who printed them. And is now displayed currently in the J. Pierpont Morgan Library in New York. If you guys are ever interested in seeing that, I guess it'd be the second, really, or maybe the first. Hold on. The first, right? Yeah, the first, it would be displayed in New York. So during the 15th century, another suit was added to the deck called the Trionfi, spelled Trionfi, also Italian, meaning triumph or trump cards. These cards depicted no numbers, but scenes and figures that reflected Italian culture at that time. Additionally, during this time, church leaders were using imagery on these Trionfi cards to aid with philosophical and religious discussions. Although the Roma, or gypsies as some people call them, did not bring tarot, they did, however, bring some groundwork for divination. They did bring palm reading, practicing with tea leaves, crystal ball or scrying, clouds, and numerology. Many incorporate numerology into the readings of tarots today. So a lot of readers, as of recently, I didn't know this when I was learning 11 years ago, but I didn't know tarot is constantly evolving. As of recently, a lot of people have been incorporating the numerology in with the tarot. So like depending on the number that you draw could also mean something within numerology. So when you're reading to somebody, that would be something that if you are really into numerology, you might be able to incorporate that into your readings. By the 16th century, cards were being used for divination purposes, like as a whole. Soon, this knowledge was becoming known as heretical, meaning practicing and believing in something other than orthodox beliefs, specifically Christian beliefs. Artists then frequently created imagery on the cards that could still communicate the esoteric ideas without defying the church's rules. So who has heard of the myth of the tarot cards should be gifted versus being bought? Okay, most of you, yes. So that is a huge myth, and it is, at least according to me, it is false. I had bought my first tarot card deck, and it is accurate AF. So the idea of the tarot cards that they should be gifted stems from this time, so all the way back then, during the 16th century. During this time, printing presses were not in use for the tarot, which made them very difficult to come by. Once the printing press was incorporated into the making of the tarot, it was much easier to get your hands on them, which increased their popularity as well, which was a blessing. And I would assume that that myth probably came back through when the Depression happened because people couldn't spend money on stuff like tarot cards. So that probably was a time where people would pass it on to, or gift it to people that are coming up through their lineage. However, I also believe that your spirituality is what you believe. So if you firmly are somebody that believes that I need to be gifted a card set, Yuletide's right around the corner. Just ask for that for your Yuletide gift. Don't try to recalculate your beliefs because I'm telling you that you don't need to buy it. Because a lot of times, if you believe that that thing's not going to work for you, it's not going to work for you. I personally didn't go into it with that sort of belief system, so I bought my own card deck and it works great. During the 19th and 20th century, a poet named Arthur Edward Waite and artist Pamela Colman Smith created the White-Smith deck, initially known as the Rider-Waite deck. And some of you are like, well, who the heck is Rider? Well, Rider is the publisher of the deck, and then they later renamed it to White-Smith deck because they wanted to honor Pamela, which was the artist of the deck. But I mean, I still call it my Rider-Waite deck. It just rolls off my tongue a lot easier. So this deck was tweaked to fit their own understandings of esoteric concepts and occult practices. This is the first full tarot deck designed in the English-speaking world. So as we talked, it was originally French, and then, originally Italy, and the French used it. And then so this was in the 18th and 20th century, it came out in the English language. So I'm sure many of you have been very intimidated, as we talked earlier, intimidated by reading the cards due to fear of not being able to memorize all of them. Traditionally, the French and British occultists believed that in order to read tarot accurately, one must memorize the interpretation of each and every card. However, during the 21st century, that changed. People began stating that one must be able to read their cards with their intuition. They believed that sticking with the old methods could possibly limit or skew the meanings of the cards. So, personally, as someone that reads for personal use, I do both. I will read for somebody, and I still use my deck or my book after 11 years. I don't have them memorized yet. What I'll do is I'll read for somebody and kind of tell somebody what I'm feeling from that card, and then I will go to the book and be like, okay, let's now discuss what the book is telling us. And even then I might look at the book and look at like the card and look at the book and look at the card and kind of look at the person, and I take a moment to listen to that intuition. The biggest thing you guys need to do is listen. That is what will make you the difference between a great tarot card reader or somebody that just this is what that card means. Have a nice day. It's nice to have somebody actually give their insight, which is what I talked about earlier when I said also know that we are incorporated and our wisdom is incorporated into this as well. So it is important to remember that the tarot is in constant evolution, and it is safe to say that there is no single true origin of the deck, and the best way to read the cards is whichever way feels best to you, the interpreter. So if you feel like you need to memorize the cards and that's how you want to read, great. If you want to just fully use your intuition on the cards, fantastic. If you want to incorporate both, it all depends on how you are guided in order to read these cards. Another thing is a lot of people feel intimidated in getting into cards. What I had said earlier is the memorization. So they switch over to oracle cards because oracle cards are a lot more self-explanatory. But you have to think of oracle cards. There was a quote by, so I don't know if you guys know of Biddy Tarot, the fantastic tarot guide, online tarot guide they offer for free. But the owner, Bridget, she has a phenomenal quote called, she said, "Consider the oracle cards as the main meal, and the tarot cards are the ingredients that go into this meal. You wouldn't want to have more than one meal due to it being filling, but you could obviously have a lot of ingredients. So the oracle cards range from 10 to 100 cards, and they are much more free-flowing and have less rules than what the tarot does, and that's why a lot of people will switch to oracle cards. However, oracle cards give insight into the greater sense of what is going on, which as tarot brings detailed instructions. So a lot of tarot card readers that I know, if they get an oracle deck, what they use that oracle deck for is they'll read their tarot and then they'll be like, okay, I'm not understanding the big picture here. So then they'll draw the oracle card as like a clarification. Like, this is the big picture and this is everything that's going into that big picture. And it's kind of great to have that breakdown. So that's the kind of difference between those two. So today, the modern structure of the tarot deck is 78 cards, comprised of 22 major arcana and numbered 0 to 21 and 56 minor arcana. The major arcana generally reflects inner self, emotional, and spiritual growth that we encounter as our entire life or journey in life. Whereas the minor arcana typically represents elements of every single day of life. A lot of times if I draw a minor arcana for somebody, I usually say this is temporary. This is not going to hold your entire life. Now, if you draw something from the major arcana, it's usually something that's going to reflect it for a longer period in your life. Or it's going to be a major life change. So who here has a deck already? 3 people. Cool. So you're not limited to the Rider-Waite deck. You can choose whichever deck you want. And a lot of people don't like to use the Rider-Waite deck because during that time, the patriarchy was strong. And that is definitely depicted in the Rider-Waite deck. You can see the difference between the female and the male and the hierarchy of the process. So a lot of people will get away from that. Additionally, there's a lot of religious influence in there. There's the angels, there's the devil, there's tons of that stuff. So if that ever doesn't speak to you very well, sometimes people will choose. There's a great deck called The Witch's Wisdom by Phyllis Curat. And if you guys don't know who Phyllis Curat is, she's like the pioneer of the witches. Like, she is a New York lawyer, and she fought for many of pagan rights. The original, a lot of her big cases were something as simple as somebody wore a pentacle to the school and they got kicked out and suspended. So she stepped in and said, that's not right. That is that person's religion, and that's not okay. She fought for people like me to own shops in towns. She fought for somebody that had died and wanted to put a pentagram on their stone. And for those of you that don't know what a pentagram is, it is a form of protection in the pagan realm. So it was this person after death had to fight for the right to have a pentagram put on their stone. So she kind of came through. She outed herself as a witch in the 80s, which was right around the time when like practical magic came out, Charmed, stuff like that. So there was this direction that they were taking back the witch's name as a good person and not as somebody that sits there and sacrifices goats and does awful things and casts awful negative spells on people. Do I think that there are witches out there that do practice that way? I'm sure, but not all of us are like that. But so she's like this huge person that came in and just was like, I'm gonna fight for the I am so sorry, what was her name again? Phyllis Curat. It's Phyllis is her first name, and then the last name is Curott. Fantastic person to research. But it's amazing that people had to fight for that right, and I'm happy that there was somebody during that time to stand up and do it. But her tarot deck, like I said, is called The Witch's Wisdom, so which actually is when you break it down, it means it's originated from Wicca, which Wicca was wisdom, divine wisdom. So that's what witches have. So, anyway, now I'm off my soapbox. So it's best to just go off of the core energy of the deck. Anything that resonates with you, specifically imagery, symbolism, anything like that. When choosing a deck, just goes with whatever feels right to you. You don't have to like have a specific deck. I mean, mine, like I said, I have the Rider-Waite deck. I got it before, so funny story. So I just got it because it was a deck there, and I was like, I like this deck, it's cute, it's small. I got a little pocket-sized deck, and I was like, this is great. Little did I know that like I was going to be traveling literally all over America for like 6 years straight. So it was great to have, I bought it before I even knew any of that information. So for me, I was like, oh, I got the pocket edition. I was guided to get this pocket edition for a reason. So just go with whatever feels right with you. If there's something like that resonates with you, I know there's like cat decks out there, there's dog decks out there, there's goddess decks out there. So just get whichever one resonates with you the most. And I always say, like, you can shop around. There's ones everywhere. You can order them offline. They're everywhere. All right, so learning what the cards mean. Start by reading the guide that you receive with your deck. Best thing to do. Get it, look through it, scan through it, but don't feel like as you're reading this guide, don't feel as if you need to memorize the meaning, but definitely try to learn about the core energy of each card. This will make it much easier when doing readings if you do. Feel free to let your intuition guide you during your readings. Sometimes this can become hard when reading for ourselves or reading for a close friend. What I mean by that is sometimes our views can be like, I know this is going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. And I know that's how it is. And this is, or you want the best, so you'll try to read the best of the card rather than reading just what it is. So you could be reading the worst of the card or the best of the card for like a friend or for yourself, or you could have something precognitive like thing going into before reading the card, and you're not seeing the card for what it is. So a lot of times it's great to have your book on hand to refer to that. With that being said, oh yeah, I just said that was my own spiel. So it's okay to interpret the cards in your own special way. There are people out there that are intuitive readers, as I was discussing earlier, that will only go by their intuition. If this is something that you identify with, then go for it. If your mind goes blank during a reading, take a moment to connect with the card and notice what you see and feel and hear first. So what I mean by that is, so if you're having like a moment or you're drawing a blank, sit down and see what symbols jump out at you at the card, and what do those symbols mean to you. What is most important about reading is that you are connecting with your intuition and manifesting your dreams with the tarot's guidance. So here are different ways that you can cleanse and charge your deck. You can cleanse and charge your deck by using crystals. Place your deck around cleansing crystals such as selenite or even Himalayan sea salt. Feel free to try to bring different crystals in for specific uses with your deck. Meaning, if you're wanting to bring abundance in your life, you might charge your deck with a green aventurine. If you're wanting success or information on your success or information for your work or happiness, you might bring citrine to charge your deck. If you're wanting more intuition, like guidance, then you might bring in like amethyst. If you're wanting just to amplify your deck, then you may put clear quartz in there. You can also cleanse and charge your deck by setting it in the sunlight or moonlight. Just be careful to never leave it out in the sun for too long. And if you set it outside in the moonlight, make sure you put it in a place that if it does rain overnight, it's in a safe spot and it doesn't get wet. Passing your deck through smudging or incense smoke. There are plenty of different smudges that you can use. For example, you can use white sage if you're looking for simply just to cleanse your deck of all energies. As I told you guys earlier, Palo Santo is great for bringing in positivity. So if you want to do like a cleanse of negative and bring in some more positive, cleanse your deck with Palo Santo. Another thing you could do was you can also use like sage and rose bundles if you're looking to do a reading about like love or self-love or healing even or purity, something like that. Rose and sage bundle would be great. Visualization works as well. You can meditate and visualize a cleansing orb around your deck, purging all that doesn't serve your highest good from the deck. Additionally, shuffling your cards without any questions in mind, just shuffling them. Sometimes people will like put on some TV or something and shuffle them, so that way they're not inputting their information into the cards. That's a great way to cleanse your deck. I think visualization holds a lot of power. So if that's something that resonates with you, you can always do that. And what's great is with visualization, you don't have to spend a penny. It's all up here. You can sort your cards and place them in their suits to reset them. So that means like sorting them and being like, okay, here's the major arcana. All right, and here's cups, and here's pentacles, and here is wands. And just setting them and letting them charge with like overnight. It's a great way to do it. If you want to like add extra power, put them out in the moonlight, do that, put some crystals on them. It's great. You can also, some people use knocking and tapping. This is not only cleanses your deck, but it sends your energy through the deck. So a lot of times people will shuffle and then knock it 3 times with their finger, and it sends their energy through it. Salt can also pull out negativity that could be affecting your cards. So people recommend burying them in salt for 3 days. It's a great way to cleanse them. Most people recommend keeping your cards in the original packaging while not in use. I know a lot of people that will also put them like up high, so it takes in that astral plane aspect, because people believe the astral plane is above us when we download from it. So sometimes people will put it higher to download that information. People also, oh yeah, the whole like keep them in the packaging when they're not in use. Some people believe that it's disrespectful to just leave your cards out willy-nilly, like, and when you're just like neglectful, they're like treat them like it's like a real person. Like don't like neglect your cards. Treat it like you want to tuck them in for the night and put them in bed and whenever you're ready to use them again. People also use like those really nice like cloth bags to store them. And a lot of times people will use crystals when they're storing their good grief. When they're storing their tarot cards, they usually stick in the 2 protection stones to protect would be amethyst and smoky quartz. So when I very first started reading for other people, I learned a guy that I was dating at the time, his mom, how she read was she would shuffle them, pass them through smoke, and then she would blow on them, and in her mind, that was her way of cleansing, as it would incorporate all the elements. So it would incorporate fire and air with fire and earth with water and air. So the earth was the sage that she was using, or the incense that she was using. The fire was what she lit to light the smoke to come from this item. And the air was her breath. And then within that, obviously your breath has particles of water in it. So like, that's how we get condensation. So then that was her form of incorporating all the elements into cleaning her deck. She was also one that would shuffle and then tap it. But when it comes down to it, just do whichever feels comfortable for you. Whatever resonates with you, that's really what it comes down to. Those are great ways to cleanse your deck, but if you have another way that feels best to fit with your needs, then do it. Additionally, if you're starting out to read, refrain from asking yes or no questions. So remember when I told you guys that story earlier when I was thrown out into reading for somebody that I had no idea who they were? They were asking questions like, well, should I start my new job or should I not start my new job? I'm like, I can't answer that. I can't do yes or no questions. I still have a hard time doing yes or no questions after 11 years. Like, I usually recommend staying away from yes or no questions altogether. So the questions when you ask, you want to refrain from those specific questions. Also stick with easy readings when you first start out. Doing something as simple as a daily pull to familiarize yourself with the meanings and develop a deeper connection with your deck is beneficial. Do morning pulls to represent what you might need to know for the day, and do night pulls for what you need to understand from the experiences of the day. In addition, to enhance the connection and to deepen your intuition, some people have been known to sleep with their tarot deck underneath their pillow. I have been one of those people and I love it. And here are some books I would recommend. And a lot of the books that I have personally read. Tarot for Beginners. That's a great one. There are 2 editions of that. There's one edition and 2 editions. That is by Lisa Chamberlain. Basically anything by Lisa Chamberlain I recommend. There's also The Ultimate Guide to Tarot. That is by Liz Dean. Another great one is A Little Bit of Tarot. There's a whole series called A Little Bit. I love all of the ones I've read so far. They have like a little bit of pendulum, they have like a little bit of chakra healing, they have a little bit of everything. And it's literally called A Little Bit, but they have A Little Bit Tarot specifically. And that is by Cassandra Eason. There's also Introduction to Tarot by Susan Levitt. This one's a long title, so this one is The Book of Fortune Telling and the Art of Divination and Clairvoyance. That is by Michael Johnstone. He's one of the ones that I grabbed a lot of that information about that I thought was really important, which is the fortune telling versus the divination. And what's a great way of telling the difference between the two and explaining it to people.
Can you repeat that title?
Sure. The Book of Fortune Telling, The Art of Divination and Clairvoyance by Michael Johnstone. And then that website that I told you guys, Betty, let's see if I have it still on here somewhere. Biddy is how you spell it. Biddy. The person that founded that company, she came out with the ultimate guide of tarot card reading. It's what I use today. So good. They do have if you go online, if you don't want to spend the money for it, and I will tell you it's worth the money, but if you don't want to spend the money or have the money to spend it, they do have, to start out with, they have a lot of free definitions online. You can like search like cup or 3 of cups, and it'll come right up. The difference between the online version and the online version and the book is that the book goes in way deeper detail. It'll tell you so much more. It'll tell you the difference between like if you're reading for career or if you're reading for love and what their specific. It goes like completely. It's so great. It's a really good book. So if you're reading like specifically the Rider-Waite deck, it's great for that. But if you're reading for the other ones, you might want to look up online to see what the definitions mean and look through your book, and if they correlate, then get the book, but if they don't, then don't worry about it. So the next class I would like to read or do is actually the Major Arcana. And we're going to break it down each card in the Major Arcana. Questions that I didn't cover anything?
I had a question about storing your deck.
Yeah.
I was always told, my mom always said you have to keep it in like a velvet pouch and
Yeah.
like a wooden box. Is
Yeah.
that another myth for storing them?
So a lot of people, like I explained to you, what I had explained earlier was that you shouldn't like just leave it out willy-nilly. I do, like when I said bag, a lot of times people refer to the velvet bag. I do believe I personally believe that you should store it and you should treat your deck with respect. So if you want to get a nice little coffin for it or a nice little thing for it, fantastic. But I mean, personally, I just carry mine around with me, and it's still in the original like tarot thing, so I take care of it and I keep it in my bag, nice and safe. Like I said, I have a little pocket edition. But I guess like that goes with like your personal beliefs. So like if she believed that that was the way she needed to do it, then that's how it was for her. You know what I mean? Like as I believe that you shouldn't leave your deck out because I think it would be like mistreating your deck. But it's all in like your own spiritual beliefs. So like if you are somebody that's like, I absolutely need this in order to make this work, then that's how it's going to be for you. So it's up to you whether you do it like that specifically or not. I don't think that's like myth proven or like busted or anything like that. I just believe that like I'm one of those people that if you need something, like if you need a specific ingredient to make your recipe work, then your recipe's not going to work without that ingredient. That's how I practice spirituality too. Does that kind of answer the question? Yeah. Okay, good. Is there anything else? Cool beans. Well, thanks for coming out. Yeah, I hope that was informational. I just wanted to cover kind of the introduction and getting to know the tarot a little bit more. I hope you're leaving with more information than what you came in with.